Hello everyone. This Pokémon fanfiction includes dark themes, swearing, and Pokémon games related humor. Chapter 1. It was one of those days again. The earth stood still and moist, and occasional raindrops found their way through the thick leaves of an old oak. The ground was surprisingly dry, unwilling to soak beneath the primeval woods. The heavy rain was already giving up hope, reaching through the elderly trees that cast their shadow upon a small town with an exaggerated name, Violet City. The town wasn't much of a city, but its proud citizens didn't worry themselves with the opinions of so-called jealous folk, referring to people that laughed at their questionable city status. The town was so tiny that it was almost completely hidden unless you found your way through the oaks surrounding it. From a distance, you could only see a lonesome tower that didn't seem interesting at all. And the truth is, the first impression was the correct one. During days, it was filled up with the town elders who pretended to be important and wise, when really, they just walked aimlessly, kicking rats in their way, spoke sweet nothings to every traveler they encountered, and lost to every trainer they faced with their weak-ass Bellsprouts, even to water trainers. Emily cringed a little when her thoughts lingered upon those miserable hypocrites. One of those days had a special meaning to Emily. Every day trained, she had a lot of spare time to spend on her own under one of those trees of her choice. Her regular days were filled with physical work at a family farm, and she didn't have time for anything else. But on rainy days, she could read or just chill and think freely. She didn't have any friends, if you didn't count the old Pokémon named Merc that had always been around, or as long as Emily had any memories. Merc wasn't much of a friend, cause the dog always slept. He wasn't intentionally lazy, just very old, and one of those days he was about to pass away. Merc was their family's guard dog, originally trained by her dad during the years of his adventures as a trainer. Emily liked it alone. She was completely used to being relatively alone and studying the world around her if she had time from work. She had a few friends when she was very young, but from age 7 the work at the farm had taken most of her time, and friendships had slowly disappeared to exist. It was, however, a stone-cold fact that she couldn't go anywhere without Merc, because the parts where she lived were full of wild Pokémon, and they didn't hesitate to attack a human without any Pokémon around. Most of the people kept one of theirs out of the Pokéball for the very reason, to avoid encounters. People that walked outside the city walls without their own had their relatives Pokémon on loan, or a friend with their Pokémon around. In Emily's case, she just walked their family dog Merc every morning when she went to work in the fields. For being a Houndoom, Merc looked scary enough that she had never needed to battle in her life. It was probably lucky, Emily thought, because Merc, being so old and slow, couldn't actually be much of a threat to any strong wild Pokémon, let alone the trainer. Emily's thoughts had wandered to a dangerous zone today. Last year, as a gift for her 18th birthday, her family had visited the Goldenrod City. It had taken a few hours to travel with the car that only used on a rare occasion, but the trip had changed Emily's perspective to the world completely. She had always known the world was big and full of different cities and Pokémon, but he had never been out there before. Experiencing something new like that had deeply touched something inside her, and there were days her heart moaned its desire for more. This day was definitely one of them. Emily couldn't listen to the slowly halting rain, or even the loud snoring of more, Mark, because all she thought was the white world around her. If she didn't ever marry, and her sister Dora's children filled his place at the farm, she could finally, at the age of 30, start her own quest of adventuring all around the world, possibly even becoming a Pokémon trainer, facing fierce challenges and battles against strong opponents who were, well, kids for the most part. Emily sighed. Majority of Pokemon trainers, strong and weak, were kids whose parents did all the work in their stead. She wouldn't quite plan in at the age of 30 anymore. Maybe she could hang around a few hikers, hear some rock Pokemon training tips and bad mountain related jokes, and be the only girl around, the center of attention for a big bunch of horny old men. That didn't sound so bright after all. Life didn't seem to be fair, a depressing thought. All of a sudden, Emily heard voices from a distance. She couldn't figure out the amount of people talking, nor the words, but the voices were certainly getting louder as their source approached it. Merc had not opened his eyes, but the snoring had stopped, and one of his ears was lazily lifting up into a listening position. Emily's hearing was decently sharp, and in a moment she recognized the first full sentences. "Fucking rain," someone sweared with a deep male voice. "Surely the instructor understands," a hopeful, medium voice muttered. "He must realize the plan needs to wait until it's dry again." A third, frail voice joined the conversation. "We must tell him right away, though. I'm on it. Abra, go," he thought. "Use teleport." A fourth, grown-up female said with a bored voice. "Wow, she's so quick with her decisions," said the first voice. "Reckless," second voice added. "We need another bitch to sexual harass. This is so fucking boring." "But she just left." "You are also reckless, buddy." At that point, Merc was fully awake, on his force and growling with a deep sound Emily had never heard before. And absolutely didn't want to hear now either. The unknown crew could hear it, and they didn't sound like decent folk at all. She tried to gesture Merc to stop. "What is that sound? A Pokémon? Fuck," Emily thought. "It comes somewhere around those oaks. Let's go have a look. Go Raticate! Go Kadabra! Go Golbat!" Similar popping sounds ensued. Emily's heart started racing, and her forehead became sweaty. She rose on her feet, but she couldn't just try to escape by running, because she figured that Merc wouldn't follow. She wasn't his trainer, after all, and Merc's old eyes seemed determined. It didn't take long before 3 trainers, with their respective Pokémon, emerged behind the trees and shared a stare at her. They were all dressed in black, dirty-looking clothes, and their hair had not seen a shampoo for days. "Here we have an eavesdropping bitch with an ancient-looking Houndoom," longest of them said with his deep voice. "I bet it's not even hers. Bitches would pick something more suitable for them, like a fucking Jigglypuff. Ha ha," added second, a dwarf-like short man with unusually big eyes. "But the bitch has a pretty face, decent boobs, and nice ass. What if we just banged her instead of killing her right away?" said the third guy, who had a malice grin on his skinny face. "Yeah, let's fuck that slut. But we need to take out that antiquated Houndoom first. It should be easy. Eradicate! Hyperfang, now!" Emily couldn't even form a clear thought about how scared she was and how little she knew about defending herself with a Pokémon, but her old companion walked slowly on his force in front of her, But then the Eradicate was already there, executing his master's command, trying to pierce through Houndoom's neck with its fangs. But Houndoom didn't even flinch. He just stared at the Eradicate with steely eyes. Eradicate quit with its attempts, and with a clearly surprised face, it backed off. "What the hell?" muttered the deep-voiced trainer. "Is that Houndoom in a high level or something?" Emily couldn't answer. She was pale in fear and didn't even know the answer. "Let me try. Golbat, use wing attack!" Oaks all around them lost half of their leaves as Golbat created a massive tornado and targeted it towards Emily and Merc. Frightened, Emily cowered behind her only hope, Merc, and the old hound stood steadily, seemingly ignorant of all the damage he took. Again! Wind blowed fiercely, ripping a younger oak from its roots close by, but Merc just stared at his opponents and began his deep growl again. Emily raised his head, feeling the strong wind blow her hair into a straight line sideways, and stared between her eyelids at their family dog. A warm thought wandered its way into Emily's heart. If this was the end, her loyal protector would stand up for her into the very end. Tears burst out of her eyes, joining the strong wind, and then it was over. The wind calmed and the scenery was clear again. The bravery of Merc encouraged Emily, and she rose up, teary-eyed, and looked steadily upon the three trainers, who were all looking at Merc with disbelief. 3 trainers trying to knock out a girl who they don't even know. What are you, gruesome devils? The trainers raised their eyes in surprise. They had not expected any words of resistance. You overheard our top secret discussion. We can't let you live. A moment of silence ensued. Hey buddy, the dwarf said to a long guy. Let's attack together. Maybe that stubborn mutt would give up. Good idea. 1, 2... Then something unexpected happened. Merc stopped growling, leaned his paws closer to the ground. Air began to feel pressuring. Oxygen seemed to disappear. Everyone began to gasp, and someone started screaming, until all voices disappeared, and the air transformed into an infernal heat. A fire burned in the eyes of Merc as he opened his jaws, and an enormous flame burst out, reaching the astounded trainers. Somewhere, someone shouted faintly, "Kadabra, light screen!" And the fire seemed to splash everywhere from an invisible wall, but the wall couldn't hold it completely, and all the trainers and their Pokémon were set on fire. "Come, close, quick, hold my hands!" One of them shouted in despair. "Kadabra, teleport!" And everything was over. Some wet leaves were still burning, and the fallen tree had opened the cloudy sky wide open. Rain fell down freely, watering everything in its path, and in a few seconds Emily realized, in some part of her shocked mind, that she was completely wet. Merc sat down slowly, with his old lungs that barely seemed to hold him, and turned his head to look Emily with an inquiring expression. Emily hesitated, a little bit scared of her old friend, but then she bent down on her knees and hugged the loyal dog, with tears falling down, mixed with the pouring water.